Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we're joined by a distinguished veteran whose career is a testament to leadership, resilience, and service. Today's guest is Shawn Burnah, who dedicated 3 decades to the Army with 24 years on active duty and 6 in the reserves. Rising to the esteemed rank of Sergeant Major, Shawn's career was marked by significant leadership roles in the Army infantry and extensive deployments that tested and proved his mettle. Shawn's military journey was characterized by his proactive engagement in numerous critical operations, including leading roles in the airborne community and pivotal work with the Asymmetric Warfare Group. His experiences across various theaters of operations have endowed him with profound insights into the tactical and strategic dimensions of military leadership. After retiring, Shawn faced personal and professional challenges, including navigating life as a single father and overcoming the hurdles of transitioning to civilian life. He channeled these experiences into a second career focused on helping others, earning a master's degree in mental health and wellness, and dedicating himself to the service of his fellow veterans. In today's episode, Shawn will share his rich experiences from the front lines to leadership training, his transitions within and out of the military, and how these shaped his approaches to life and wellness. He advocates strongly for the mental and emotional recovery of veterans, emphasizing the importance of initiating the healing journey early to manage the often tumultuous post-service life adjustments. Join us as we delve into the life of Shawn Burnah, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran who continues to lead by example and inspire us with his unwavering commitment to growth and service. Shawn, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Adam.
I really
That's quite
appreciate
the
it, man.
introduction.
Yeah, man. You earned it, dude. 30 years. And I personally have to say I have a lot of respect for you, man. I was doing my homework on you before we came in to record today. 30 years, Sergeant Major, notable things like Asymmetric Warfare Group, didn't get a commission, Operation Hammer Down. You've been around the block a time or two, man, and I have a lot of respect for you.
Oh, thank you.
So let's just jump right in, man. I always like to start kind of just painting a picture of what life was like for you growing up, kind of what inspired you to join the military, and then we'll kind of move into your military career, some highlights, and then the entrepreneurship piece of all of this. So whenever you're ready, man, take it away.
Yeah, so I grew up in northern New York in the Adirondack Mountain area. Um, and like many kids of that, you know, 70s, early 80s time period, everything was outside, you know. So, yeah, when you sat inside in the 70s and 80s, you were going to be placed on washing dishes, folding clothes, vacuuming floors, and there was already a lot of work. I mean, like I said, northern New York. So at the age of 8, because my father and mother were divorced when I was 8, I started mowing the family lawn, which okay, big deal. It's a 2-acre lawn, and lots of hills and everything on it. So it would take me, and it still takes me when I go up there and hand mow it. Takes about 6 hours. So at 8 years old, pushing a lawnmower for 6 to 8 hours, it starts building something in you. Of course, with my mother doing everything she could to be a positive role model would be like, "Oh my God, that lawn looks great," and it probably looked like shit because I was 8 years old,
Yeah, but boosting your confidence, right? Like doing the mom thing.
and and on top of that, I would be out there shoveling snow, like, "Hey, I got to go to work," so basically, I was doing all the man of the house stuff. I was going out there shoveling snow, um, getting the sidewalk cleared for her, at least getting the end of the driveway cleared so that she could get out. And it it's things that you don't think about that harden you. And of course, being a good mother, she could turn it into a game. Like, oh my God, look at you go! You're a machine. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Being a mom, so dad's not in the picture for you then.
right? My father, bless him, he's in another place now. He had a hell of a childhood that when you hear the actual story would, it's one of those things. If you threw all your problems in a pile and you looked at everybody else's, you'd take yours back. Um, and so he had an alcohol problem, and a whole lot of PTSD from growing up. So there was a lot there for him. It took him years to unpack it. And the thing that I tell people is, even though there was that very estranged, headbutting type relationship with my father, the one thing that man always said whenever he left the area, like if he was going back home or I was going someplace, "I love you." And and in the 70s, that's that was different. So that was him doing everything he could to overcome his monsters. And you know that was, even though we'd have just argued, and of course I'd be a little boy and I'd be crying, and he would say, "I love you." And that's something that I like to tell my son every day, is give him a big hug, let him know I love him. And he's 12, and of course a lot of times he's like, "Yeah, I love you too, Dad," back off. you know
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but it's like you said, it's super important. Like you recognize your dad was having, some issues, but he still made it a point to let you know that his issues weren't because of you, right? Is that kind of what I'm hearing from you? Yeah, and that does go a long way. I remember, growing up. I grew up in, I was born in '85, so I grew up in the early '90s, and a lot like what you were talking about. Me always outside. Like, don't come outside or don't come home or inside until the from dusk till dawn light comes on, right? Because we lived out in the sticks in southern Indiana with the closest neighbor a mile down the road or whatever on 3.5 acres, and we would, man. We'd play in the ditch, play in the yard. Fuck, I set the yard on fire one year. Like that's just like we didn't play inside, and I totally relate to that. And my parents split when I was young, but that was the one thing that my dad always did, was make sure that he knew, no matter what, that he loved us. Like, no matter what was going on, it was always, "I love you and I'm proud of you." And I totally relate to what you're saying, and I think it's important for the audience to kind of get a sense of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, it pays dividends in the long run. I mean, you can hold on to some anger about some issues, but that's something that you can draw from, like a source of strength you can draw from. Um, and so then, once I got to be fourth grade, so whatever age that is, 10 years old, I started wrestling. Um, and I really loved the sport. And then when so I wrestled from fourth grade up through basically up through college. Um, and in eighth grade, one of my buddies joined the football team, and I was like, "Hey, how'd you get in the football team?" Like, I didn't know we could, as eighth graders, we could join the high school football team. He's like, "Yeah, you got to go talk to Mr. Morris." And so he laid it out, on the line for me. And so I went in there, did my fitness test, and um, got the evaluation from my phys ed teacher, and went and played high school football, which led to actually I made the varsity wrestling team in eighth grade, um, and the varsity track team. And if you want to talk about, people talk about hazing, be an eighth grader on a high school football, a high school wrestling team in the early 1980s, and you will understand what hazing really is.
I'm curious, how did that work? How were you in 8th grade? Because there was a similar situation in my high school. The high school and the middle school were connected. So the middle school where I grew up is 6th, 7th to 8th grade, and then 9, 10, 11, 12 is high school. I know different areas of the country, it's different. 7th and 8th are technically middle school in some places, but our high school and middle school were actually connected at the library. And so we would have a situation where we would have good 8th graders, right? That we could use for the varsity football team because Poseyville, Indiana, North Posey Senior High School, it's tiny. I think my graduating class was like 85 or something like that. So how did you end up, an 8th grader on the football team? Was it a situation like that?
Uh, well, again, it was I tried out. I'd never played football before, other than out in the sandlot type, in the backyard type football. Uh, and I tried out, and because again, it's a small school, and so they were like, "Yeah, we got extra pads and we got extra uniforms, so yeah, bring them on." Um, and then when I tried out for the wrestling team, it was kind of, we'll see. And then I out wrestled the other guys, because I had from fourth grade on in experience. So that's when I made the varsity team. And, there was, I want to say there was any, you know, condemnation of the situation. However, there was the naive eighth grader aspect of it, when, the seniors like, hey, go do this, kind of like, like a private, hey, go get a box of grid squares.
I was just thinking that, right? Like I remember I showed up to my first unit on October 10th, 2003, which was the third ID, and those guys had only been home from the invasion for like maybe 2 weeks, like with leave in there. So,
Right.
and I know with 30 years of experience in the army, you remember those. So the BDU days, we didn't have flags on our uniforms unless you went to combat. Remember
Right.
remember that? And so I'm in an infantry unit, no flag, no combat patch, no CIB. Man, like you said, talk about an 8th grader being hazed on a varsity team. It's
Come here,
like,
Cherry.
yeah, be a private in an infantry unit after they come home from a war, that hasn't happened. Oh, yeah, I totally relate.
But I wrestled, and then that then I ran track, and of course a lot of the guys that were on the wrestling team were on the track team. So by this time they know me, and there was no more shenanigans. Um, because I'd held my own on the wrestling mat for the varsity team, so there was it's kind of like uh, you're still an eighth grader, but there's a new level of respect for your abilities and your work ethic.
For sure. I think that's the one fun thing about wrestling too. So I wrestled from before kindergarten all the way through my senior year of high school. And kind of my downfall was I just didn't grow fast enough when I got to high school, wrestling 152, 160, 171, and 189. Like those hard weight classes where you just got dudes who are yoked because they they got their testosterone and shit early. But, I think wrestling is also awesome because sometimes it really is about technique, right? Like doesn't matter what your size or your strength is if you've got a good foundation and technique. So I totally get why you're an 8th grader on a varsity wrestling team whooping some ass, right? Because you just perfect that craft over, what is that? 4th grade to 8th grade, 5 years essentially.
Right. Yeah, and and I understand the whole. I grew up in, like I said, in the northern New York at the time. You were either most of those boys were either farmers, so you know they were wrestling, so there was less work to do on the farm, or they were the sons of lumberjacks. So again, less work because they're not out there having to throw 4-foot logs all night long. So hey, what better thing than, hey dad, I'm gonna wrestle. All right, that's cool. So anyways, I joined the army. My father had been a corpsman for the Marines during the Vietnam era. Um, and like most boys, it was pretty intriguing to me. Um, and my mother was a nurse in the reserves, which at that point in my senior year, the last thing I wanted, because my mother had this idea that I should be a doctor, and anybody that really knows me, someone who's walking around holding something and whimpering and crying, you know, I'm more of the person that smells blood than the person that's going to be like, "Oh my God, let me help you."
Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
Now when it's my son, it's a different story. Like, hey, you know, but when I see another grown man, like, oh, my leg hurts, I'm like, you know, hey, dude, that's great. I remember I got my foot run over by a tractor when I was working on the farm and having to go out and split wood that night. Like, okay, yep, you got your foot run over, big freaking deal. Go get the wood.
Yeah, it was a situation like are you hurt or are you injured? Because there's a difference, right? Like, yeah, no, I totally get that. So originally you were interested in being a forest ranger or some kind of athletic training, right? And you mentioned, in previous conversation that your parents kind of, you know, had a big role in your decision to either join the military or go to the forest rangers. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I I had wanted to be a forest ranger. That was my number one goal. Once I got to be high school level, I had done really well in biology classes, um, and forestry was what was drawing me in, and that was a, a point of contention when I started my senior year, and my mother had this dream of me being a doctor, and I had a dream of being a forest ranger, and um, there was a lot of arguing and late night, you know, arguments between her, me, and my stepfather, because like most parents of the '80s, they knew best, or so they thought. Um, and so I originally joined the Army Reserves as a medic and absolutely despised it.
What
People,
about it?
again, because people were injured, and you know, and a lot of it was self mutilation, basically. You know, um, guys coming in with their teeth rotted out of their head. Hey, my teeth hurt. What do you got for me? I got sympathy, dude. Go brush your teeth. I don't know what to.
I love that, man. That's so good. Because it's true. It's like, well, what are you doing to take care of yourself right now? Like, this is beyond what I'm capable of helping you
Yeah,
with at
it's a
this
different
point.
story. Like, hey, you know, I went to go clear a vehicle in the motor pool. The fan belt blew off, and caught me in the mouth and knocked out my teeth. Okay, legit.
Yeah, right, right. Like I was walking by well, I was the gunner on a Humvee, and we hit a bump, and I smashed my face on the turret. Right, like
Right,
now I'm missing some teeth. Like, okay, there's a reason you're missing some teeth.
right. Um, and so in that, and it was a reserve unit, and there were some very large individuals.
Mm.
And so every month, old PV2 Burnah was out there wrapping